See, the idea that I've run into a lot recently when I point out Old Testament's got 4,000 years, 400 years between, and the New Testament's only 75 years, and really we're only talking about 35 because Jesus Christ didn't start preaching until he was 30. And look how much the world changed as a result. But by the same token, look how much the top-down thinking still prevails. It's almost impossible to get rid of that monster because Satan is alive and well. Top-down thinking prevails. But you don't have to be the one of them. I've been a Christian since I was 9 years old. It's amazing how people look at the Bible. Look, man, there's 66 books there, and most of them in the Old Testament. The Old Testament's real thick. The New Testament's only yay thick. All right, now, why y'all want to study that Old Testament stuff? That's a long time ago. That's describing the problem of man in relation to his maker. That's what it's all about. The Bible is the story of man's relationship to his maker. He's got a problem. Man does. He wants to be God. Yeah. He created us for fellowship with him. Now, you can't have fellowship with a puppet. That's impossible because the puppet is you. So he had to give us free will. Well, that included the ability to reject him. So what is our normal tendency? Reject him. And that's what it's all about. See, that's the Old Testament covers 4,000 years. There's 400 years between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Nothing was written pertinent to the central message of the Bible during that time. There were other writings, of course. People love to write whatever. All right, do you realize that the New Testament only covers about 75 years? That is all. Now, what happens when Jesus Christ appears on the scene? They knew there's a Messiah coming, but what they saw didn't meet their specifications. Yeah. What's he teaching? Secession. There's no evidence that during that period of introspection of him out there in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights with Satan, that maybe my best way to pull off this mission that I've got to change the hearts of men, I need to go get up with those Pharisees and get a PhD like Gamaliel, under Gamaliel, like St. Paul did later on. There's no evidence at all. To the contrary, totally different. In this world, but not of this world. Just don't play their game. All right, now when you don't play their game out there, it's a simple life, really. And it's very profitable compared with everything else because you see, so much of what we do in life out there has absolutely no function at all. It's just excess baggage that we have to put up with because of the way that we don't think. And one of the easiest things to do is get rid of the bankers out there. Don't be paying interest. Well, you got to start to learn how to grow the business. It doesn't take all that long to really get started. But there's no reason not to have continuous growth all the time. And when you get to my stage of life, that it's the best way in the world to pass the medium of exchange on to the next generation.
Nelson, we're going to talk about the problem here and what that you've identified in the book. And I think that's a really critical part of the book. So why is the problem so important?
Well, if you don't understand the problem in life, the solution doesn't mean anything. You got to understand. That's why the Old Testament is so important in the Bible, to dramatize and show over a period of time how people keep making the same big old mistakes. And that you got to secede from that sort of thing. Otherwise, you're going to be one of them. Can you imagine what this concept will do to families that catch on to this?
Change their whole life.
Well, consider what has happened out there today in the everyday world. What about the divorce rate that is out there today? And, Christians and pagans, there's no difference at all. They both got the same cotton picking problem. Uh, God bless him. Lamar Phillips was a guy I worked with a long, long time. Back with my Equitable New York days. He had two daughters. Between the two, there were 5 marriages. Well, let's get personal. One of my oldest brother had a boy and a girl. The girl went 3 marriages. And today she's married, and she's a Episcopalian priest. But this has been caused by our educational system. Taught us to be dependent upon governments. There's a tremendous element of dependence in the act of worship. You're going to worship that on which you're dependent. Well, people won't recognize that. Christians say they worship God, but suggest you take away one of the government programs that they like very much and see what happens. They can't conceive of life without that government program. One very good friend that for life that he's been dead several years now, sang in the choir with me and so forth, and had 3 boys. He says, I agree with what you're saying, but I can't conceive of life without Social Security. That's an idea that should never have come up in the first place. Mm-hmm. It's wrong because it will fail. That's no question about it. It's inherently defective, the whole idea. And DeSoto, in all his writings, he points that out vividly.
And the government programs kind of ties into the golden rule a little bit because, again, it's
Sure.
who has the perception of the goals at the stage.
Yes.
Did you mean to, get
It's
people
inferred,
to think about that?
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That they should make that correlation on their own, but sometimes you have to get specific with people here to get them to understand and recognize. Okay, let's put it this way. I remember years ago in a Sunday school group that I was in of folks my age and whatnot, and I was talking with them on an outing that we had. We're all against sin, but let's talk about what is sin. And they'd always come up with some specific item of some kind. Well, that's not the definition at all. It's obvious that we didn't just happen here. We were created by a creator. And that creator created us for fellowship with him. That was the whole logic. And we're not here for a very short period of time. Good grief. My 87 years is nothing compared with the history of this universe and so forth. This is training camp for the eternal, and that's all. All right. He had to give us free will. And that included the ability to reject him. Yeah, there's no way you can have fellowship with a puppet because you are the puppet. That's ridiculous. All right, so what's our tendency? It's to reject him. Well, rejecting him, it means separation from. Right? So sin is any separation from God. Anything is separation from God. Well, how many ways can you do that? Good grief. Man's so egocentric. Yeah. That his nature is to be away from. Jesus had that mission to redeem us from sin. He's on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Mm-hmm. He was separated from God the first time and only time. Mm-hmm. That was sin. He became sin. Sin has a price, death. That separation is what killed him. It wasn't all those beatings and things like that people refer to that preceded putting him on the cross. But yet, watch what happens out there with people describing that time of year. All the references is about all that beatings and abuse and whatnot. That didn't kill him. If you had a coroner's report at that time, they died of a broken heart because he was separated. Now let's put it down to a simpler turn here. I remember a preacher one time saying his wife was riding down the road with him, and in those days we had bench seats on cars. We didn't have bucket seats like we do now. And she says, we used to ride close to each other and so forth. And she was over against the passenger's door, whatever. He says, I didn't move. Same sort of thing. God does not move. People do. Well, that's what creates all of our problems out there, is that we can't identify sin. We don't know what it looks like. Well, the separation there is encouraged by the devil, Satan. He makes all his stuff look like it's going to be attractive. It will work. We don't need God. But the fish hook gets you, and you turn around and bite you in the butt every time. But people still can't catch on.
The fish are the last to see the water.
Yes, because they don't recognize what is sin. What caused me to separate from? Yeah. And this takes a long time to get through to people, and that's why this is a training camp for the eternal, that's all. It takes some time to get all that nonsense out of your brain, and frankly, most folks never do. Jesus Christ said, I'm the light of the world. Light overcomes darkness, always. There are no exceptions. And see, here's that dumb idea that old FDR got firmly implanted in people's minds when they started out the idea of Social Security. It was originally supposed to be the, quote, employer pays all. And he says, oh no, let's make it contributory. The employer pays half and the employee pays half. That way, now let them try to do away with my idea of Social Security. They think it's theirs as a result. When the truth is, and DeSoto proves this conclusively, so does Mises, that employees pay everything. What actually is being said is that here our government dictates that you haven't got sense enough to put all this into a program that would solve for your retirement and so forth. So we have to make sure that we do it by confiscating half of the input for this thing. But, on the books of the employer, this is how much he's got to pay out totally. See, the idea I've run into a lot recently when I point out Old Testament's got 4,000 years, 400 years between, and the New Testament's only 75 years, and really we're only talking about 35 because Jesus Christ didn't start preaching until he was 30. That's a very short time frame. And look how much the world changed as a result. But by the same token, look how much the top-down thinking still prevails. It's almost impossible to get rid of that monster because Satan is alive and well. Top-down thinking prevails. But you don't have to be one of them.